and welcome to Paramera, and today we are here with Tonya and Joey.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Thanks for joining us, guys. Appreciate it.
It's an honor.
Thank you for having us.
We have seen you guys on your podcasts and in other people's podcasts, and what I noticed was just the amount of energy you have brought, to the overall paranormal field, but the interesting things that you've done. And at first, when I first saw you guys, like, what is these guys talking about? And so I started paying attention and following you guys and looking at your podcasts. And I was almost overwhelmed by the amount of information that you guys are actually putting out there, like legit information, and the amount of research and work you guys have actually done. And I was like, man, we really need to bring these guys on and let's just talk to them. And I don't think enough people are listening or following you guys.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I had Courtney go out and look at you guys as well, and she's like, "Yeah, why we need to talk to them." So,
Well, we're flattered.
yeah.
Let me just ask, when you first said, what are these guys talking about? Like, what do you mean by that?
I was going to say you wouldn't be the first person
Yeah.
to ask that question.
Well, I think when the first thing I saw you guys on was, I think you were doing a story time.
Oh,
yeah.
goodness.
Mhm.
Right?
We do, yeah.
Saturday morning
Saturday
story
morning
time.
story
Yeah.
time. Mhm.
So I was like, they're doing a story, and then Craig from, I think it's that Three Bearded Paranormal.
Yeah, we were on there last night.
Oh,
Yeah.
you were?
Yeah.
Yeah, he I saw him. He had sent me a link or something, and I saw you guys, and I think I don't remember what we were talking about. It might have been Bigfoot, but don't quote me. But there was this big chat going on. I'm like, wow, I thought we were doing over here yesterday. We're doing something completely different. And then on another one, like, you guys got heavy into like UFOs. You were talking about UFOs, and you started talking about some of the different conspiracy theories that were going on. And I was like, and I can't remember the one, but I was like, man, a lot of people don't even know about those. Like, I know about them, but I'm surprised I didn't realize other people were paying attention. And just you kind of run the gambit on.
Yes.
You're not just talking about one thing, you're talking about multiple things, and you're not just dipping your toe in. You actually know what you're talking about,
Thank you.
and
Thank
thought
you.
that was interesting. And you don't see that a lot. We just see a lot of people talking about, like, yeah, this exists and so, and
Yeah.
moving on. And I'm more like you guys, where I want to, if we're going to talk about it, let's go in and be logical and think through it and do our research. And I think that's
Absolutely.
the big thing. So,
Cool.
yeah. So I appreciate that about you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Courtney has broken out a bunch of questions for tonight's event, and I'll
Great.
probably be taking a backseat a bit, but I wanted to definitely give her the floor, and I will let you go, babe.
So, first of all, how did you guys get into this? Like, all of these different topics, like, because it is actually amazing how much you guys actually cover.
Well, thank you. So I've been a lifelong experiencer since the time that I was very young. I didn't always see spirits, but I sensed them, and I would have very strange things happen. My grandmother was a psychic medium, but I never really knew what to do with any of that until in 2009. Joey and I had recently moved to West Virginia. And we were big fans at the time of the movie The Mothman Prophecies.
Oh.
It had come out not too long before that. And we moved to West Virginia in 2007. And when we got there, I said to Joey, Point Pleasant, West Virginia is only 3 hours away, and there's a Mothman museum. But he wasn't that interested in going. It took me a couple of years to talk him into going. So we went for the weekend in 2009. It was August 2009. And we had an experience. We didn't see the Mothman, but we did see an interdimensional being. We lost over 2 hours of time during the sighting. And we went back into town and reported to one of the shop owners who had given us directions how to go out to the TNT area where people go looking. And he said, if you see anything, let me know. So we had gone back and shared with him our experience, and he put us in contact with some paranormal investigators. And they also brought in Rosemary Ellen Guiley and our friend Steve Ward. And we took them out and showed them where we had the sighting and everything. But from that point on, we all became very good friends, and we began mentoring with Rosemary. And it was really helpful for me because I had had all these experiences all my life and didn't know what to make of them, didn't know how to navigate them. So Rosemary was really key for me with that.
Right.
And we just mentored under her for about 10 years. And
Right. And Rosemary could speak to all these different things. And for me, I was born a questioner. I bet you the first word out of my mouth was why. And not in an affront to authority, but I have an insatiable curiosity.
Mm.
And there's a lot of things in life, without going too far left, there's a lot of things in life that I think are unjust and wrong. And I think that humanity has not lived up to its potential in the way it treats each other. And I write a lot of things about empire and father-son relationships and heredity and responsibility. I have a musical about, it's called Three Gothic Doctors, but it's about Jekyll, Moreau, and Frankenstein. And a man using technology to create something to kind of usurp woman, that's a big responsibility. And in all three of those cases, they abrogate their responsibility to their creation, right? So here I am, Catholic. I make confession, the sacrament of confession, and I go in to make my first confession. I do that, and I say to the priest, now I'm in Catholic school, I'm only in 4th grade. I say to the priest, before I leave, I have a question for you. And he says, yes, Joseph. And I say, well, dinosaurs, Adam and Eve, what can you, and I hear through the screen, right? It's just a matter of faith, Joseph. And something in my brain said, oh, no, 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 no. I'm capable of faith, but I want to know. And in everything that I write, I'm working on a book with a wonderful researcher named Steve Ward. Steve's really up and coming, and he's been around for a long time at the same time. But it's called Parallels and Patterns, a new paradigm for the investigation of paranormal phenomena. Sounds kind of complicated, but what we're trying to do is do a survey of UFO, cryptid, hauntings, all these different things. And what are the parallels? What are the overlaps? I don't know that we're going to come to a unified theory, but I've always believed in transdisciplinarity, right? Really big word. On the PhD level, everybody's very subdiscipline, and they're not talking to each other. But if you start pulling in quantum physics, if you start pulling in psychology, if you start pulling in story analysis as an actor and a storyteller, I have a wife who's a wonderful psychic medium, an energy healer. I don't have those skill sets. So as a team, what do I bring so I can carry my weight? So I started to overlay story, and we found that it really works. So that's why we're so broad. There's a reason for it. It's not just that our attention sort of wanders, but it's very systematic.
But now, I know you got your question, so we're going to move on. I want to talk about the library because I think you've written a book. Is that accurate? About this particular library, and it's available. People could go out and buy that book, correct?
They can. Correct. Yep, it came out 2 years ago this month.
All right.
Yeah. So, did you want to ask a question about it, or you want to say?
No, go. I wanted to know the name of the book and then what you tell us about it.
Sure. So the book is called Watch Out for the Hallway, our 2-year investigation of the most haunted library in North Carolina. And our publisher, Rosemary, really pushed for us to call it the most haunted library in North Carolina. After reading the manuscript, she said, I'm pretty definite that this is the most haunted library in North Carolina. So, and then we were on with Richard Syrett, and he said probably in his mind the most haunted library in the United States. We haven't been to every library in the United States, obviously, so we can't say that with any kind of definity. But we were asked to take over. It had originally been sort of like a tour where there's this memorial library. It was built in 1929. It was known in the community for having activity. People would always report things like feeling like they were touched, feeling like they had been
books flying off the shelves, being scratched,
shelves.
Skirts being lifted, all
Right.
manner of things.
Patrons as well as library staff.
Right, because it's a working library. Well,
maybe not now.
It shut down for the pandemic, and it may not open back up. But at the time, 2015 to 2017, it was a working library. So interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And I was creative director at a historical education tour company. And I walked in one day, and in the lobby, there was this poster about nightly tours in this haunted library. And I said, wow, well, what is this? And they said, well, it's shut down now. We can never seem to keep tour guides. They would get freaked out. They would leave the door open at midnight and they'd run out. But we would bring the public in to do a tour. And I said, well, my wife happens to be a psychic medium, and we're being trained by these very good, very high-level investigators because of a weird experience we had. So I call it an audition. You always kind of push back on me on that.
He calls it an audition. I don't know. It didn't feel like an audition to me, but the man who owned the tour company, who was looking for someone to take over the tour, brought us there. I don't like to know anything about a place as a medium before I get there, because then I think it colors, it can color what I'm picking up. And so the less I know, the better. So I was walking through and basically room by room, picking up everything. And it was all in line with the history of the building, which, like I said, we knew nothing about. But it didn't, I guess Joey thought it.
Well, I'm an actor.
But it didn't feel like
so when someone says, come in and we'll try it out and so we see how it goes, it's an audition.
Yeah.
But anyway, so by the numbers, exactly 2 years, 75 nights, 150 hours, 575 guest investigators. Probably about 5% of which were sensitive psychic mediums. Tonya was just beginning to get a handle on her psychic mediumship, where she was really questioning herself. So it's this 2-year laboratory,
right,
where I am a copious note taker. I have a notebook for every project, for everything. So every night it started where on the drive home and when we got back, because we were so wired every night, so much would happen. I would have to have a soda pop and a candy bar, right? I don't know if you guys have ever had that experience where you need some sugar and to replenish your energy after an investigation. And we would write this stuff down.
Mm-hmm.
And more correlation, corroboration. And then we started to see patterns through the building, different rooms and different things happening. And then slowly but surely doing research, doing interviews, filling in the pieces. And it got very exciting. So we started a blog on Facebook on the page we restyled it. We said, this can't be a tour. We want to thoroughly investigate this place, but open the investigation to the public.
Right.
And so that's really what it was. We had this revolving door of people, and some people got freaked out and they didn't want to be there, and all kinds of experience, space-time bent, and there were spectral MIBs, so many things. So we do this blog, and before I knew it, I had about 40,000 words. So we would tell Rosemary about it. Rosemary Ellen Guiley was our primary mentor, and many people know that name. And she would give us advice, guidance. How do we do this? Because sometimes we got in a bind. Some ugly things happen. And I said to her at one point, I think there might be a book in this. And she said, oh yeah, there is, and I'm publishing it. So go ahead. So at that 2-year mark, we said, okay, I think we started to learn. They were redoing the library. So they were putting in a lot new electric. They were putting in a lot more metal. They were taking out the antiques. The sort of house ghosts and spirits were upset about it. They were down. They were kind of fatigued by everything. Mm-hmm. And it felt like the right time to kind of end that chapter and move forward, for us to take all of that. So yeah, so that's how it happens. So it takes you through room by room. It actually starts in the courtyard and just kind of unfolds everything. And it has a little bit about some of our other experiences and the tools that we use. We take being paranormal investigators as seriously as we take any other job that we do. In part of my life, I'm an academic editor, and there are rules, there are style guides, there are right ways and wrong ways to do things. There's an investment. People are counting on you. You're giving data to the public. So God bless. I mean, in the past 2 years, we've been on a lot of podcasts. We have our own show. We
Right.
tour and we lecture. We go into people's homes. That's an incredible amount of responsibility. So you ought to have a pretty good handle on what you're doing.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you definitely wanted to make sure that you have a handle on that. You know,
Yeah, firm.
yeah. So with the library, you did all these hours of investigation, and like you said, you were using different tools, different methodologies. Um, did you find that some things work better than others, or like was it kind of like a peanut butter spread of what works and what doesn't?
I think it was a combination of things. It really was a laboratory. It was an amazing place, and there were a lot of factors. Like we said, incredibly haunted. It was almost like a battery for people's psychic abilities as well. So people who thought they had absolutely no psychic ability at all would come, and all of a sudden they're seeing spirits or ghosts. Now, it was great for me because I had been seeing spirit for several years by that time. After I had my Reiki level 3 attunement, spirit people just started showing up, and I just kind of thought it was my imagination. And occasionally I would share it with a client and they'd say, oh, yeah, that's my brother, and it's the anniversary of his death. And, but I would still kind of dismiss it as my imagination. But then when we were in the web library and I would be, seeing someone and I wouldn't say anything. And then 3 other people would say, there's a guy standing over there and he's got overalls and work boots and, exactly what I was seeing. And I'd be like, okay, this is not in my head. And it was a great opportunity for me to just really see what I could do with these, mediumship abilities. But it was wonderful for people to come in and also realize that they had these, I feel like everybody has these abilities. It's just, some to varying degrees. Largely teenage girls would come in and all of a sudden they're seeing spirits, and to them they're like, oh yeah, it's like I forgot I could do this, but yeah, I can do this. And their dads would be like, what is happening right now?
Yeah.
So I guess we sort of had a diamond. We had definitely the psychic mediumship, which Tonya was talking about, and that's wonderful when you can have that. So we did an episode on Into the Outer Realms on Friday with a cryptozoologist named Brian Seach. And we were talking about quantum or interdimensional non-flesh and blood Bigfoot. And so his team is now using a psychic medium in the field to address that. That was wonderful. So a psychic medium on the team is wonderful. I believe in using a minimum of technology. So I basically use a video camera and a digital recorder. Of course, we want to record everything that's going on. I use an EMF meter of some type, an energy meter of some type, probably going to upgrade to some fancier stuff. I use a temperature gauge, especially in the web library. We did see our biggest drop was 13 degrees with no explanation whatsoever. Yeah. So we figured 5 to 8 degrees would usually correlate with something drawing energy in order to manifest to do something. And then so the EMF, and the spirit box. Now, we happen to really like the PSB 11. We get no endorsement money for that or anything. I've tried a lot. There are these fancy ones that people make with fancy wooden cabinets, and I'm very skeptical of the digital ones. We use the digital ones in support, but I still like that analog piece of equipment. And in the web library, that PSB 11 just worked. For whatever reason, the elements, how they all came together, really facilitated communication through that box. That was one piece. The psychic mediumship, good old-fashioned research. When we train and we lecture, go to libraries. Ironically, we're in a library, but go to libraries, go to courthouses. interview people, newspaper articles. The internet is a great resource. All the old guard that we talk with and interview say, you guys are so lucky you have the internet.
Yeah.
Now, as you guys know, the internet, you have to do a lot of vetting, a lot of cross-checking, a lot of corroboration.
Mhm.
You can't just go on and look for a piece of research, print it out, and go, oh, here's our answer, you know? And then the fourth piece was story analysis. Ghosts and spirits have stories. Buildings and homes have stories. They have cohesive histories. It's wonderful to look for gaps because that helps us decide, is this true? Is this mistaken? You know, you can go one by one and say, okay, I have this big gap. I have a plot hole, you know, like we say in the business.
Yeah.
Can I fill this plot hole? Does it indicate that someone's lying? Is it a lapsed memory? Is it a misunderstanding? Is it a mundane explanation? So those were the four pieces that we sort of overlaid. And within the history was the transdisciplinarity, right? How does quantum physics? I mean, you're talking about quantum physics when you hear someone's voice and then they say that thing. It comes under all those principles, right? So yeah, so that was our basic way of working.
Wow. And so with the analysis that you've done, you know, you've come to the conclusion that there are multiple things going on. Is that inaccurate? You know, it's not just one person in a overalls, it sounds like.
Exactly. No,
Dozens
multiple
of
ghosts.
In the upstairs, and I'll pass this over to you in a second. There are two hallways: the north hallway and the south hallway. North hallway you can get into from various doors. There was an active kitchen with a spirit or a ghost who was kind of violent, had a violent history, caused a lot of trouble. Those rooms were kind of active. On the other side, though, there was no way in and out. It was just a hallway. That hallway would change size, shape, dimension in your perception. Multiple people saw it. Sometimes you felt like it was a Dutch angle, like the old like Star Trek, like when they tilt the camera, right? Instead of, you know, because you couldn't tilt the set. And you would feel yourself sort of pushed against the wall as you were going down it. The oddest thing, I think, was we actually encountered three dimensions one night simultaneously. There was our dimension of the living. There was the other sort of, we called it the Grand Central Station for ghosts, and we can explain what was beyond the end of that hallway that we think created a portal. And we did hear from numerous spirits and ghosts, yeah, it's a portal. It's a portal. You know, we had those
Through
recordings.
The PSP 11.
Yeah, and but so there were those both spirits, ghosts, and non-human entities. But then this one night, it's the darndest thing. There was another group of, they were human, but they were completely oblivious to these other two, our dimension and that other dimension. And it only happened that one night, but I would stop doing this if I wasn't amazed pretty often by what we encounter. And that was just amazing, you know, to have three dimensions operating simultaneously, one of which was completely unaware of the other two.
Now, how do you know that the other dimension is there? If I can, so you have this third dimension that is not aware that you're there, or the other dimension's there. So how do you know they're there? Is what I guess I'm trying to. Is there a way to detect that?
Well, you were seeing them.
I was seeing
Okay.
the spirits. So yeah, and we were getting voices coming through the PSP 11, so we were getting some communication there. And that particular end of the hallway was always very strange. But yeah, that was
and
incredible.
Measuring the energy and the temperature and all. I mean, within 8 or 10 cubic feet, we were getting very strange readings, but sort of correlating. The nice part about going in 75 nights, 150 hours is you can really look at things temporally, and you can see, oh, that ghost that's always been in that room is suddenly in that room. And the children ghosts always stay downstairs, but all of a sudden there's this little girl spirit upstairs. Okay, this is different. What is going on here? So it would cue us. So that particular night, yeah, we're collecting all this data. visually, through clairaudience, and through readings on the equipment that were indicating these three dimensions, and it was odd.
Wow.
It was odd.
It was, you were asking about, the types of encounters and ghosts. We had residents who were pretty much there almost every night. Sometimes they'd be gone and they'd come back, like Dr. Thompson, and he'd say he was fishing. Where were you last week? I was fishing. So we had the resident ghosts, a lot of them very friendly, particularly on the first floor, totally different energy on the first floor. We had children that, a little boy and a little girl that I would see almost every time running around playing hide and seek, from about the 1920s, maybe early 30s. And we had trickster spirits one night, and I don't like clowns at all. So let me just say,
me both.
don't like clowns.
Mm-hmm.
One night we were in the what we called the intro room, and we're going over just like the rules, here's how everything's going to go, and everything like that. And I look out in the hallway and I see this clown, and he's got like balloons, and he's just kind of strolling by, and he looks at me and grins and just kind of strolls by the door. And I'm like, oh no,
Nope.
no, no, no,
Nope.
no, no. Nope, nope, nope. But I think that sometimes ghosts or spirits can get a line on what you're afraid of.
Yes.
I don't think that there was really a clown. I think whatever it was projected itself as that because it knew that I didn't like clowns. So we had stuff like that. We had spectral men in black that we encountered. Interdimensional. One night I was in the north end of we all were. We were down at the north end of the hallway near the kitchen that Joey was talking about. There were a lot of nights that the energy was so strong and heavy and almost like oppressive that I couldn't even enter into the kitchen. This was one of those nights. So Joey was in there. A couple of other people were in there with him. Me and another woman who was also a psychic medium. She was on the investigation that night. We couldn't go in because of the energy. So we're standing out in the hallway looking inside the kitchen. And I'm seeing something that I can't even possibly get my head around. I can't even figure out what it is, but it's this sort of rotund, hairy, really coarse black hair. It's got like these kind of claws and fangs and like pointy ears. Almost looks like something out of a Maurice Sendak book, except it doesn't look friendly, like, where the wild things are. It looks kind of, malevolent. And I'm thinking, okay, I can't be seeing that. I'm not going to say anything because obviously I'm getting some signals crossed or something because there's no way I'm seeing that. And the woman in the hall next to me turned to me and said, do you see that hairy creature standing in there? And I was like, yeah, I see it. So the next day, the library had a flea infestation, and they had to bomb for fleas, which was not a problem they had ever had before. So it's hard to know if they were connected, but
right, it's odd. It's a weird circumstance, and if it's an interdimensional sort of energy being, would it bring fleas with it? So it gets into that Bigfoot problem. Two other interesting things. I went up to just check everything, do a sweep of the building that night. I walked into the room past where they had seen this thing, and I heard in my ear distinctly, "Whoof," like that. So there was a little bit of audio evidence. And then when we're writing the book, we went to MUFON and we went to Newfork and looked at the UFO records for that area, just kind of doing due diligence. And if there's spectral men in black, they're often related MIBs to. So just, there was an impulse that we honored to be really thorough. And son of a gun, within a couple of nights of them seeing that interdimensional being, the water just beyond where the library sits, someone reported a UFO.
Huh.
Someone with military experience who said it was a very thorough report, and related to the spectral MIB, also within a week, there had been a UFO sighting on MUFON. So again, we encourage your viewers and all, there really is something to this thoroughness.
Yeah.
I'm not interested per se in UFOs. Bigfoot even less so. We all have things that draw our interest. But, when UFOs are correlated with Bigfoot, and this hairy interdimensional was just another form of what you could call a Bigfoot. And and all in correlation with all these things going on in this very odd working library, it becomes fascinating. It becomes much harder to dismiss as a trick of the eye, or if someone just says,
Right.
"Oh, I think I saw some kind of hairy thing in that corner there."
Yeah. Now, do you guys discuss like what you think might have triggered all of it to even start? Or do you have an idea?
Great question.
It's kind of a perfect storm of, one of the resident spirits, Dr. Thompson, his family owned that property.
Okay.
Now, that property has a big history. It's right on the water. Some people, for tourist purposes, call it the Crystal Coast. It's the southern Outer Banks. It's also called the graveyard of the Atlantic. So there are 5,000 some documented shipwrecks in that area. That's a lot of activity. That's a lot of fear. That's a lot of power, energy, storms, wrecks, so on and so forth. Nautical spirits. Across the street, one of the other doctors from the building, when the building was built as a multi-use building, built a hospital. So now you have a hospital. Well, in the 1940s, 350 ships were sunk or torpedoed by German U-boats off the coast of North Carolina.
Yeah.
This is where history comes into play. A lot of them were oil tankers. That's horrific burns for young servicemen, sailors, merchantmen. The library, the hospital treated a lot of them, but then we come to find out later on, which is always nice to find these things out later and drop in a piece of the puzzle instead of knowing it up front. The library was used as a triage. That hallway area where we encountered burn victims, where there were multiple dimensionalities just facing that hospital, was used as a triage. So now all these pieces, there's a radio tower. You're right near the water. The ionization of water opens up all this stuff. The configuration, that weird architecture.
The area itself, so we came to learn that it wasn't just a library, although there was sort of a big cluster of energy or paranormal activity there. But the whole area is called the Promised Land. And it's because people would migrate there from some of the islands during hurricanes, and they called it the Promised Land. And we would talk to people who grew up in that several block area and say, this, my house 2 blocks down was very haunted as a kid. So the whole area, but the hospital that was directly across from the south end of the building, I think it was the 1980s, became no, I'm sorry. It was probably before the 1980s. I don't know when it went from a hospital, but it went from a hospital to a nursing home. And it was a nursing home for quite some time. And I believe it was in like the late 80s, early 90s. They started evicting a lot of the nursing home patients because they wanted to convert it to an upscale hotel. Well, that was really traumatic for those nursing home patients and their families, of course. Now, the building was kind of unique in that it was like it had a section or a wing that was like 2 stories. But then it had this sort of high-rise component to it that was attached to the 2-story part. So the 2-story part they kept as a nursing home, and then the rest of it was converted to a hotel. So we would frequently get a ghost from the nursing home. One night there was a gentleman sitting by a window, and I approached him. He seemed confused to me, and I said, I would like to help you cross over if you would like to cross over. And he said, no, I don't need help crossing over. My wife is across the street at the nursing home, and I'm not leaving until I'm waiting for her. So I would see, nice. There was a woman that I would frequently see who had dementia. She was clearly from the nursing home. So, yeah, it was a perfect storm.
Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. So I want to make sure that we definitely plug that, and people need to go out there. I encourage everybody to look at it, and maybe hopefully we'll get a lot of questions back on it, and we can do another podcast just specifically on that. I think that'd be fun.
Great.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. So you guys actually said that you guys went on a paranormal investigation, like for Mothman, right? And so I actually want to know, when did you guys meet, or like was that like, did you guys meet like on like a paranormal investigation, or like or any of these like mysterious circumstances, or like how did you guys meet?
We met. It was meant to be, but it's not paranormal. I mean,
Okay.
right? You were.
I don't know.
Go ahead.
So
Go ahead. You
I-
asked for it. Just remember.
Okay.
it's a story. So I have a book that came out before Watch Out for the Hallway. It's called Living the Intuitive Life, Cultivating Extraordinary Awareness. And it's just it's full of exercises to help people cultivate their own natural intuitive abilities or psychic abilities. But in that book, I talk about how Joey and I met. And I felt like it had to do with really my inner voice and perhaps our guides. And since then, we've come up, or I have another theory, which I'll get to in a second. But basically, 1997, I'm a single mom living in Arizona. I have 2 young boys. I had never done any theater or any acting at all, had no interest in it. I had done some modeling, but never had any interest in acting. But one day I'm just sitting at the kitchen table and I just have this impulse. I have to be in a play and I have to do it right now. So I get the newspaper and I look, and there, sure enough, there's an audition in the newspaper for a theater in Scottsdale. And I had to do it, which was very strange. So I go to the audition that night and I almost chicken out because I'm like, what am I doing? I get there and I'm like, what am I doing? I don't know how to act. I've never done any acting. This is crazy. And I would walk out of the theater and like kind of pace around, and I go, no, you came all the way here. You have to do it. There was this compulsion that I just couldn't explain. So I finally went in, I did the audition, and I thought that this was some, like, I don't know, exercise and getting over, talking in front of people or something. I don't know. Because at the time, the last thing I would want to do would be to stand on a stage in front of people. And I thought it was about that. And so I'm driving home and I'm like, thank God that's over. Whatever. At least I got over that fear. And by the time I got home, they had left a message that I got the leading role in the play.
And a difficult role.
Yeah.
A very difficult role.
And so, the people who ran this community theater, were friends of Joey's. So meanwhile,
I'm in Maine, right? She's in Arizona, and I'm married. I'm in a job that I don't like. I've given up pretty much writing and acting because of my wife's expectations of, growing up and working this office job, and I'm in publishing. I'm miserable. I wind up with 2 kidney stones, a stent, lithotripsy. I'm miserable. And in the midst of all of this, my wife says, hey, by the way, I met somebody else in grad school. I don't love you anymore, and we're done. Goodbye. So I go, oh, my gosh, I'm 29 years old. I've invested, we were college sweethearts. I've invested a decade. I've given up everything. What am I going to do? And this, everybody wants me to come home to Jersey, right? The big Italian American family, all my friends I went to school, come back to Jersey. We'll make everything okay. We'll introduce you around. Yeah. No, I have to move forward. I can't move backward. So I get this voice in my head and they say, call Jerry and Lori in the theater that you haven't talked to for 6 years. They're out in Arizona. See if you can go spend time with them. So everybody thinks I'm nuts. I don't go past like Georgia, Philadelphia. My whole life, I'm an East Coaster, all up and down. But I go, I'm going out to the desert. I'm taking my life savings. I'm taking 6 weeks off. I've never done anything crazy. I've always played by the rules, and look where it got me. I'm 29. I'm sick. I'm nowhere. Blah, blah, blah. So I go out to the theater where Tonya had been drawn to, and we see each other. We get introduced. And I don't even really remember, but I seem familiar to you. I'm struck by her beauty, her energy, all this stuff, but I'm still trying to get over my marriage. So I walk in one day and there's this beautiful headshot on the wall. And I say, oh, who is this? And hun, I know this isn't it, but it's close and it's right here. So here, there's this picture of this woman on the wall. And I say, oh, who's that? She's pretty. And they're like, oh, they're like right on top of me. Oh, we got to introduce you. But I'm like, no. They're like, that's Tonya. You met her. I said, yeah, I know. I'm going back to Jersey to try to figure out my life in a month. No, thank you. So, and I still carry the ticket in my wallet. They call her up, say, go see a show. She gets a babysitter. Why are they asking me to see the show? They sit us next to each other. And that was it. We moved in. I moved out to Arizona, worked at the theater. My divorce came through in May. I move in with her in July. We get engaged in September. We're married in December, and that was 23
And
years ago.
everyone thought we were crazy. But when I first saw Joey, it was this recognition. It was like not his physical body, but when I looked in his eyes, there was a soul level recognition. And I remembered him. So I talk about that in my book, but what's really cool, I'm going to be completing a past life regression hypnosis certification soon. So it'll be fun to I'll regress Joey and see if he remembers.
Yeah, and just to put a quick button on that, so Tanya's son, who I adopted, Jeremy, when he was 5, he was not even 3 at the time. And I'm combing his hair one night after a bath, and he looks at me. Now, keep in mind, not even 3 years old. Or maybe just 3 years old. And he goes, I guess he was calling me dad by that time. He says, or maybe not. He goes, do you know why your wife left you? Just like that. And I said, well, I have some pretty strong ideas, but I'm open to, I'm open to opinions. Like, what do you got for me? And he says, well, the angels knew that mommy needed a husband and Daniel and I needed a daddy. And that's why that happened. That's why she left you. So, I still get 23 years later, I get our son's all grown up, but is leaving the city to come stay with us for a little while tomorrow. So he'll be embarrassed if he sees this. So was it paranormal? No, but it was spiritual, and it was.
Well, our daughter and I came up with a theory. So she's really interested in her heritage and her grandparents, her great grandparents who she never met. She's also very interested in World War II. So when she found out that both of her great-grandfathers had served, great-grandfathers had served in World War II, she wanted to learn everything that she could. So she's collecting photographs, memorabilia, letters, everything that she could get her hands on and making this scrapbook. And she finds out that both my grandfather and Joey's grandfather were likely stationed either near each other or possibly even at the same base in Africa. And so Jolie and I wonder, did these two men know each other and make, say, hey, I got this granddaughter and she could really use someone. Yeah. And then his grandfather's like, yeah, well, you know what? I have this grandson who's going through a thing. And I think these two would be really good for each other.
Oh, you mean on the astral plane?
On the astral plane. Yeah.
Because my father served in Vietnam. And he was engaged to a woman, and she cheated on him, and his family found out. His dad went and got the ring and all of this. My great-grandmother on my father's side was very close, Gumas they were, very, very close with a great-grandmother on the other side. And those two conspired to get my parents together. So there could be a little bit of our families have been working together in weird ways. Side. They're Budinskis, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but it's worked out. It's worked out
very well. Mm-hmm.
But that's funny though. It's like you think, someone's not pulling the strings. You're making your own decision, and then you maybe not.
Maybe not. I mean, because there have been incidences, and you're like, may want to rethink that one a little bit there.
That's
awesome. For me to have that compulsion, I mean, it was so, if you knew me back then, for me to do something like that was so far out of character. I mean, I was.
And me too. That was the weird thing. I mean, it could very much be a rom-com where you have these two people, it could be a Nora Ephron movie, two people opposite sides of the country who get these weird compulsions that put them into what they call the meet cute. So here we are in this little theater in a strip mall in Arizona. I'm just reeling from this unexpected. I mean, she blindsided me, and I guess we see what we want to see and we don't see what we don't want to see. But she blindsided me, and you were, a single mom with 2 little kids. And it worked out, but people thought we were nuts. They thought we were nuts.
Yeah. So now my understanding is you guys have another book coming out up here in next few weeks. So I thought we'd spend a few minutes talking about what is that and what's it about.
Right. So the laboratory of the 10-year mentorship with Rosemary Ellen Guiley before she passed last year, and all the other people we've worked with, really set us up to do the web. So that was 2 years in one location in a controlled, very active and wild, but controlled environment. So now we have the skill sets. So now it's time to go into the world and do some good. help people out, try different things. So, Roommates from Beyond: How to Live in a Haunted Home. That's very specific, not a haunted house. Haunted house conjures nothing but negativity. And as we were talking about pre-show, more and more people are reporting these things. They're becoming a part of their life. We can't all be having exorcisms. We can't all just be picking up and moving to different places. And you find that these things often follow you. So you went through this whole upheaval and for nothing. So we get to coexist. That's what we've come to. This is value added for us, for our daughter. And we not only get guidance from colleagues and from mentors and from living people, but from the other side. So this book is it's in 4 parts. One is sort of an introduction in our philosophy and how we've gotten to this place. Then part 2 is the haunted homes that we've lived in over the years. One of them was a haunted house. We catalog that. In the third part, we've selected 6 or 8 cases with enough depth, with enough complexity to sort of show the different tools we used and what were the outcomes. And not one of them was not positive. And we just recorded a show that'll air on KGRA radio next Tuesday night about a loss, you know? And then the fourth part is how to take the tools, how to apply our experiences, how to use everything from sage and smudging to intuition, to negotiation, to story analysis, to either mitigate or make a haunting feasible and workable and livable and enjoyable in your home.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's a handbook. It's a practical handbook and a case history.
So do you see a lot of people, we were talking, like you said, about a lot of people seeing this. So do you see the experience that you're going to be talking about? Are they your experiences? Are you showing examples of, like, look, we went into these houses and this person was experienced this, and here's what we did to help them coexist in this environment. Is that
right? So part 2 is the houses we've lived in. Part 3 is the case studies.
Okay.
Yeah. And we've made them anonymous.
Smart.
But we're very careful to say we've changed the names, we've changed the locations, because when you get deep into these, family issues come up. And also, too, you have to have respect for the ghosts and spirits. Just because they're dead, we don't need to be bandying about specifics of who they were and why they're haunting places and what deficits they've had. I mean, we've dealt with suicides. We've dealt with dementia. We've dealt with living people, but who have PTSD and whatnot from the war, and that's affected the haunting. So I don't feel the need to name names, but we have not changed any of the facts in the cases at all to make them more sellable or interesting. Believe they're plenty interesting on their own.
Yeah. And that's one of my big things about people. I love ghost hunters. I love ghost fetch. I love shows, obviously. But my biggest challenge is and has been is that we go into the house, we're like, yep, it's haunted. Sorry about your luck. We're on our way out. Have a great day.
Right.
And we don't stop. And like, there's all these consequences involved. There's all this emotion involved. Stormy Daniels, not that, I don't know if you know who she is, but she has a new show out. And part of her show, she actually brings in counselors and all these things. And very similar to what you guys are doing, right? And I think that's the part that's missing, right? Like we're not teaching people to deal with it, whether it's real or not. We're not teaching them how to cope, how to be in the environment they're in, because some people don't get a choice. They're just in the environment.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And the case that we recorded for KGRA for Tuesday night, which we had to walk away from because the lead person, the mother, was kind of driving it through her trauma, through her seeing everything through the lens of the reality TV show. So just very quickly, it turned out to be a young man who committed suicide. Now, why was he in the basement of their house making a disturbance? His parents used to own that house. And when his life blew up on him, he would go and stay in that basement, sometimes for weeks at a time. So he had a gun wound to the head. There's trauma there. We have seen in multiple cases where a neurological trauma on this side will cause some cognitive confusion on the other side. Nobody's talking about that. There's a reason why sometimes ghosts don't communicate, or they seem difficult or very agitated. They're carrying some of these artifacts with them to the other side. And she was just, it's a demon, and he's trying to possess me, and he's trying to destroy our family. So we feel like we have two clients. That's our approach.
Right.
We have to advocate for both sides. We're mediators, right? Medium, that comes from that same root. We're the connection between the two sides. How many paranormal investigators see themselves that way? I kind of wonder. And I think we need more of us who go, okay, we realize that your space is being invaded, but by his perspective, you have invaded his space. So if you think of movies like The Others or whatever, sometimes they flip the bones, as we say, and that happens. The living are the ones who are invading.
Yeah.
And we try to negotiate sort of a settlement, if we can. And that's what Roommates is about. But in that case, she had just gotten so caught up. And, at one point she called one of the paranormal shows, and they were more interested in coming in and documenting the haunting, but with no solutions. And she was smart enough, because it was ratcheting up, and it got bad, and the daughters were very agitated. So
I was going to ask one more question here. Was you have a radio show?
Well, we had a live stream internet show from January through the end of September. So we did 35 episodes. Along the way, we were picked up by two radio networks, ERRT Radio and KGRA Radio, who said, hey, do you mind? Could you send us the audio? And we will rebroadcast it. So we said, yeah. And
awesome.
It was a Friday afternoon, which was great during the pandemic, but it's hard to get guests in the middle of the day on a Friday. A lot of the topics and all that in 35 episodes had sort of run their course. So we're doing audio only for KGRA and ERRT Radio all through October, cases and haunted homes based on the book that's coming out. So it's kind of a little advertisement for the book, but an opportunity to talk about those. And then in November, we're going to relaunch. We're trying to decide when, probably Thursday nights. And the format will be a little different. We're going to have more roundtables, so to get, broaden the discussion. We're going to go into last night on Three Beards, and I know Craig and company, we kind of did government false flag cover up disinformation. So we're getting a little more. I hate the term conspiracy theory. It's been co-opted as being something horrible. If you actually break the language down, there's nothing wrong with it. It's a theory about the actions of a group of people. It seems legitimate. So we're going to broaden out to those areas a little, because really, with the Navy videos and the outing of ATIP and all of this, and To the Stars Academy, are we going to get disclosure? Now we have a Space Force. Well, this might just be the public trot out of something that's been in the work. Yeah, UFO gets very shady and weird, and
no, I agree.
Yeah, so it'll give us an opportunity to study those. So back in early November, we'll be back on once a week on video with people in the chat, with guests, roundtables. Yeah.
Now, is this an actual? So, do you have can anybody listen to these radio stations? Can anybody access them?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
So the best way to keep up with us, we post everything and let people know. Go to Into the Outer Realms on Facebook.
Yep, and we're gonna put that right at the bottom.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
if they go there, and they can listen to them, and it's quite an honor. If people know Richard Dolan, we follow him on Tuesday nights on KGRA. So that was a huge honor for me. Someone I really admire. He's a guy who does it by the books and has been great for the field. So yeah, thank you for asking all that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I want to make sure that we get as much information out there about you guys as possible.
Yeah.
And give people an opportunity to kind of get to know you from here. I hope we can do another one here in the future. We'll kind of maybe break out some of the pieces, of this and just have a longer conversation on a particular item. Maybe bring another person or two. I think that will be cool.
Yeah.
So,
we would love that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, Paramera out.
All right.
Take care, guys.